All right, lads, last week we put to pasture one Alex O'Connor, and with great compassion and abundant mercy, delivered his predeterminism into the slaughterhouse. However, today, in part 2 of this series, we will be exposing Ben Shapiro with facts and logic, and his most unkosher view of free will. Welcome back, fellow children of philosophy. I am your friendly neighborhood hopo, the homeless philosopher. If you have not seen the previous video titled Why You Must Be Free, then do right now, go back and consume that evergreen homeless wisdom, as Ben Shapiro cannot be debunked with just one YouTube video. Go away now, and I shall wait for you to return here. Finished watching that, mate? You got it? Good. Let us once again proceed. All right, lads. Unlike predeterminism, which is reactive, both libertarian free will and self-determinism offer a proactive viewpoint. That is, they assert that our decisions are not simply reactions, but rather proactive choices that create new chains of events. In other words, unlike predeterminism, where every event is one domino in a single cascade, initially set into motion at the Big Bang, each choice that you make initiates a distinct sequence of dominoes, setting off a new chain of reactions unique to that specific decision. So in this regard, both libertarian free will and self-determinism are in agreement, but they differ in how they explain the mechanics of this process. Now, lads, to illustrate this point, let us consider a scenario. Imagine you're at a birthday party and offered a choice between a slice of chocolate or strawberry cake. The critical question here is, could a supercomputer, armed with all available information about the universe, predict with certainty which slice of cake you would choose moments before you make that very choice? Now, how about 2 hours, 2 days, 2 years, or even 2 millennia in advance? If you are of the persuasion that the supercomputer could only provide high probabilities at best, with decreasingly reliable guesses, you are leaning toward the belief in libertarian free will. Now wait just a minute, you homeless dingbat. You forgot about us quantum indeterminists, who also agree that the supercomputer could only calculate a probability, not certainty. Ah, yes, certainly you diabolical blokes are not forgotten. In fact, do recall the subjective, intrinsic and objective trichotomy from the previous video. If predeterminism occupies the subjective category, then libertarian free will and quantum indeterminism occupy the intrinsic persuasion. This is because both positions hold that the indeterminacy of your decision lies in the very fabric of reality itself. That is why the supercomputer, despite its total access to existing facts, cannot predict with certainty which choice it is that you will make. Both of these perspectives, while intriguing, are fundamentally a load of garbage. To demonstrate this, let us turn our attention to an ordinary experience of randomness, such as flipping a coin. The whole point of flipping a coin is that we do not know, nor have the power to control exactly which face the coin will end on ahead of time. However, any modern computer could predict with certainty which side the coin would land the moment the flip began. This is because after the coin leaves contact from the person flipping it, which side it will ultimately end up on is all a matter of physics. The amount of strength you use to flip the coin, the weight of the coin, gravity's effect on the coin, when and where the coin makes contact with the surface it is to land on, etc. All of these physical forces can be calculated by a computer ahead of time to predict which face the coin would land on with certainty. Take another example. Suppose you need a random number for some purpose, and so you Google search for a random number generator website. On this website is a button you can click that generates for you a random number between 1 and 100. Is this number truly random? Well, what is actually happening is that the website is employing an algorithm that factors in multiple unrelated variables, such as the time of day, how many users are using the website, the sum of your IP address, and so on. The website then factors all of these variables into an equation and produces a number that was, for your intents and purposes, randomly generated. Of course, because this is an algorithm, you can plug in any hypothetical variables that you want and calculate for certain which random number would be produced given those variables. And if you know the algorithm for this random number generator, you might not even need a computer to calculate the outcome, given that you are sufficiently big-brained. Now, lads, the point is simply this. In both cases, randomness is a phenomena of consciousness where essential causal variables are not precisely known. In this sense, randomness is objective, as opposed to intrinsic to reality itself. This is because the causal factors are not missing in reality itself, but only missing in one's understanding. If the causal factors were genuinely missing from reality itself, you wouldn't be able to flip a coin or use a random number generator. In both cases, because a sufficiently advanced computer could predict the outcomes by accounting for physical forces or algorithmic variables, this kind of randomness is best thought of as objective, but not truly intrinsic within the fabric of reality itself. With this understanding, we turn our attention to the concept of quantum randomness. This concept, often called true randomness, suggests that randomness also exists as an intrinsic property of the universe. But this is a philosophical mistake on the part of 20th century scientists who, while specialists in their field, were ill-equipped to have thought about their discoveries metaphysically, philosophically, or whatever word you'd like to use that means, with total logical, big-brain consistency. Spoiler alert, their error is simply this. It is an attempt that ultimately conflates our lack of causal knowledge, which is objective, with lack of causation in reality itself, which is intrinsic. How is this so? Let us begin with some basic logic. The most fundamental observation of reason is that anything is either something or not that something. For example, you are either homeless or you are not homeless. You are either alive or you are not alive. You are either subscribed to this channel or you are not subscribed to this channel. Let us now apply this tool to existence itself. Either something is actual or it is non-actual. Something either actually exists or it does not actually exist. Whatever is actual is in fact actual. The actual cannot be non-actual and vice versa, nor can something be both actual and non-actual at the same time and in the same sense. So now, lads, here is a question. Is potential itself actual or non-actual? Now think hard, lads. You got it? No? Well, it doesn't matter, because your answer has no actual or potential effect on this video. The answer is potential refers to the non-actual, because the non-actual does not actually exist, while potential refers to what could exist does not presently exist. And what does not exist presently does not actually exist at all, at least not yet. So, if what is potential doesn't presently exist, how can potential exist presently as a phenomenon that I am now talking to you about? Well, you have answered your own question. The only actual sense in which potential actually exists is as a conscious phenomenon. And not just any phenomenon, but one that is explicitly about the presently non-actual, which could one day become or discovered to be the actual. In other words, potential actually exists objectively as a conceptual phenomenon, but it does not exist intrinsically in reality itself. For if a given potential existed in reality itself, it would no longer potentially exist, but actually exist. However, quantum randomness asserts exactly this, that the quantum object possesses an actual potential to appear in one of multiple given locations. As you can see, this is a load of garbage, because, as we just learned, there cannot exist an actual potential in reality itself, because a potential is a non-actual, and there cannot exist something that is actual while being non-actual. And this is where this idea of quantum randomness violates cause and effect. Quantum randomness asserts that within a given range, the quantum object can end up potentially anywhere. This is to say that the cause of where the quantum object will end up being is a potential cause rather than an actual cause, which is to say the cause itself is potential, which is to say the cause is non-actual, and so not actually a cause, which is to say the cause described does not in fact exist. Thus, the idea of intrinsic randomness stems from a misunderstanding of the nature of causation, because the whole idea of quantum randomness emerges from the misapplication of randomness as an objective property of human consciousness onto an intrinsic property in and of reality itself. The misapplication being the equating of the actual lack of causal knowledge with lack of actual causation outright. And now, lads, I think with some persuasion, you will see how the fallacy of intrinsic randomness is exactly applicable to libertarian free will. Let us return to the party where you are being offered a slice of cake, chocolate or strawberry. What sets the human being apart from other beings, it must be argued, is that he possesses some sort of element X that grants him the libertarian free will that humankind uniquely enjoys. It is this very element X that prevents the supercomputer from being able to predict for certain which choice you will make. That is because this element X exists as pure causal indeterminacy. And because this element X exists as pure causal indeterminacy, the supercomputer cannot extract from the element X any of the determining causes the supercomputer would need to make a certain prediction. Now, lads, as some of you may have caught on, the causal indeterminacy of this element X is exactly identical to the alleged causal indeterminate potential of quantum randomness. In other words, for something to exist as indetermined is for something to exist as yet to be determined. And if something is yet to be determined, it is potentially to be determined. And if something is potentially anything, it is non-actual. And if it is non-actual in reality, it does not exist in reality. And so, the idea of an indeterminate anything, whether an element X or quantum object, cannot exist as actually anything that is intrinsic to reality, and so cannot exist intrinsic in reality at all. However, our experience of really choosing between potential alternatives does most certainly exist. So, how do we account for this? Simple. As has been repeated all along, while potential does not exist intrinsically, it does very much exist objectively. In other words, the choices you face are real. That you truly choose among those choices is real. That you are proactively shaping your potential future in the present is also real. Yet, it is not due to some unexplainable element X that exists as pure potential in the actual present, but rather it is because you, a real and actual person, for real and actual reasons, are determining whichever choice it is you will choose. So, what does this mean for my supercomputer? Well, lads, as a homeless man, I actually own no such thing, only that I might potentially own one at some not yet actual point. But supposing that this hypothetical potential becomes an actual in reality, my supercomputer, with perfect knowledge of both all the things that make you, as well as all other relevant facts, could indeed with perfect clarity predict which choice of cake slice you would choose, and that whether 2 minutes ago or 2 millennia. And now, lads, this is where we debunk Ben Shapiro's entire worldview, because, as many believers in God would argue, the observations of our own free will are one of the strongest arguments there is for the existence of the divine. However, if indeterminate libertarian free will is in fact the case, and quantum randomness too for that matter, then that seals off the possibility of an omniscient God altogether. How is this so? Well, as the most diligent of you might have caught on to, my supercomputer, with access to all facts of existence, is in no way different from God when it comes to total knowledge of reality and predictive power. If it is possible for my supercomputer to access all the facts of reality, yet not be able to predict with certainty which choice you will choose, then it is likewise impossible for an omniscient God to know for certain which choice you will choose. As to be omniscient is to have all facts of reality. However, to be all-knowing and yet not know even a single item of knowledge is a contradiction in terms. Therefore, this God would not be omniscient, and therefore he would arguably not be worthy of being called God. To come at this from the religious perspective, if God knows the future, then he knows what choices you will choose. But if God knows what choices you will choose, then at no point will your choices ever exist in a state of indeterminacy. Otherwise, you could surprise this omniscient God by choosing that which he didn't know you would choose. Of course, that would not be knowledge at all, and so this God would not be omniscient, and so would arguably not be God. And so, given Ben Shapiro's omniscient God, choices cannot be indeterminate, so they must be non-indeterminate, which is to say determined. Now, lads, please appreciate that throughout this series I have been very careful to make a distinction between what is determined, what is predetermined, and what is self-determined. The most important point of this being that the word determined does not necessarily imply predeterminism. In its usage in this video series, determinism is an umbrella term which can include both predeterminism and self-determinism. More on this distinction in the next video. In other words, congratulations, lads. We have saved Judaism from Ben Shapiro's libertarian free will view. But wait, there are still so many questions, such as how our choices maintain meaning, the concept of responsibility, whether we are fated or destined to our decisions, how crucially self-determinism differs from predeterminism, and the like. These are all great questions, so great that they will have to wait until the next video, where we shall appropriate Sabine Hossenfelder as clickbait in the thumbnail. Until then, this is your resident homeless philosopher signing off. Please like and subscribe for more high-quality homeless content. And please, for the love of free will, tell Ben Shapiro to sit down and watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes.